The last few decades, mass shooting rates have skyrocketed in the U.S. But what counts as a mass shooting? And how many are happening actually? Well, according to the U.S. government, any shooting with 4 or more injured counts as a mass shooting, whether there are actual casualties or not. The sad fact is that there are a lot. Really a lot, and it is increasing year by year.
Gun violence in this country is an epidemic. Let me say it again. Gun violence in this country is an epidemic, and it's an international embarrassment.
We are following the breaking news out of Texas, and it is heartbreaking news. 14 students and 1 teacher are dead, killed after a shooting at an elementary school.
As you can imagine, it is a challenging, difficult morning. George is on the scene in Florida where another community is in disbelief, shocked by devastating violence. This time,
first time in history, firearms were the leading cause of death for children in the U.S. in 2020.
People are simply fed up with the gun violence here.
Horrific scene unfolding. This is just outside of Chicago. Authorities on the scene of a deadly shooting at a 4th of July parade in Highland Park, Illinois. At least 5 people shot and killed, 19 hospitalized.
Last month, shootings have taken place at churches, grocery stores, doctors' offices, and elementary schools.
Tonight, the sheriff here revealing the worsening toll, at least 59 now dead, more than 500 injured.
In 2021 only, there were 693 mass shootings, of which 390 were fatal for some of the victims. 390. With this, the U.S. has the most mass shootings in the world, accounted for more than 73% of these tragic events worldwide. This is even more disturbing, considering the fact that the U.S. makes up only 4% of the planet's population. This means not only that the shootings are more frequent, but also that it is much more concentrated into one area. In fact, shooting-caused death is now the #1 death reason in the U.S. amongst children and young adults, topping car accident death tolls. This is unbelievable. These crimes are mostly committed by young adults, and sadly school shootings make up a significant part of the overall numbers. Only in 2022, so basically in the last 8 months, there were 27 school shootings with 83 injured, 27 dead. And the list goes on. This is a quite complicated subject, since no direct link can be drawn between the events except one thing. And that one thing is the easy access of firearms for anyone in the U.S. No other country has so many weapons per capita as the U.S., with 120 firearms per 100 people. The closest second country is Yemen, currently in war, with 53 weapons per 100 people, so less than half of what the U.S. population owns. You can basically walk in a weapon store in the U.S., get checked in 2 minutes, and then arm yourself like a small nation's army. No questions asked. Oh, and if you're not sure you would pass the background check, you could still buy and own any gun secondhand, totally legal. Background checks are only performed if you buy new firearms from an authorized store, but it is not forbidden to buy it from anywhere else. Most U.S. personnel says it is a constitutional right of them to own weapons, but also the majority would prefer deeper background checks and a safer process overall. After every major shooting, the current president speaks about how tragic what happened, and the shooter probably had mental illnesses which may have caused this. Also, the internet and video games is something to blame too.
The First Lady and I join all Americans in praying and grieving for the victims, their families, and the survivors.
I want to begin by saying that Hillary and I are profoundly shocked and saddened by the tragedy today in Littleton. I can only say tonight that the prayers of the American people are with you. Thank you very much.
So, all of us need to demand a Congress brave enough to stand up to the gun lobby's lies. All of us need to stand up and protect its citizens. All of us need to demand governors and legislators and businesses do their part to make our communities safer.
But then never really happens anything. What's more surprising is that statistically, more shootings induce less regulation, since people have to have a chance to defend themselves in a situation, you guessed right, caused by gun violence. This totally absurd system is trackable. For example, since 2021 in Texas, it is legal to carry a gun with no training beforehand and without any background checks, even not knowing the weapon's origin. And following this, another 24 states joined this movement too. Nowadays, we have one of the weakest gun laws across the US, resulting even more shootings than before. Statesman says it is not the loose laws, but the violent video games which causes the shootings. If you kill someone in a game, it makes it less of a big deal in real life. But nobody talks about other countries with much more gamers in contrast that has much less shootings. If we are going to blame it on video games, at least have the data to back it up. International studies show that there is no connection between the number of gamers in a country and its shooting rate. What these studies does show, though, is correlation between gun ownership and gun violence. The US in this case is just as much an outlier as Switzerland, for example. The only difference is that Switzerland has virtually no shootings, while people still have guns and still play video games. Mental illnesses, which are the other favorite cause of the politicians, are not higher statically than anywhere else, yet the mass shooting numbers are much higher. So what is going on with the US? Nobody knows really. The statistics do not show an exact cause of the violence itself, but what we do know, it is easier to get deadly weapons than anywhere in the world, even more so in the high-income countries. Of course, it would be easier from the outsider's viewpoint to say, just ban those weapons like other countries, problem solved, but in the meantime, gun lobby is extremely strong in the US. Also, it would be a political suicide for any president to ban guns, since most of the population owns some, just like their fathers did, just like their grandfathers did. It is not easy to just cut out something so common from everyone's lives. There has to be a change in attitude, not just laws. What solution could be viable? Most probably time and consistency. No political party would lose an election because of de facto banning of firearms, but a slow transition could be the way, starting with more serious background checks, psychological tests before giving out permits, regulating the second-hand market, and so on. It has to be a process. We can only hope that in the future one of our presidents will be brave and strong enough to make a difference. We are looking at you, Joe. If you made this far in the video, please consider subscribing and giving us a thumbs up.